So I've had the Switch 2 for about a week now, and I'm still learning all of its quirks. But what I want to do today is play a couple of Switch 1 games, particularly those that ran a little rough on the handheld, and kind of gauge the performance boost, if any, on the Switch 2. Now some of these games have received full Switch 2 upgrades, fully utilizing all of the Switch 2's new features, such as DLSS, while others have not. But it's been said that regardless of receiving any particular update, most Switch games will run better on the Switch 2's upgraded hardware. Well, we're going to find out. This video is only going to be in handheld mode because once in dock mode, there's a bunch of variables that could affect visual acuity, such as what kind of display you're using, what type of refresh rate does it have, etc. Maybe in the future I'll do a follow-up comparing games in dock mode, we'll see. Starting out with the most obvious one, and that's Tears of the Kingdom. The game by no means was an ugly game on the original Switch. The game was gorgeous. But while playing in handheld mode, there were a couple of issues. A couple of rough areas graphically, some background pop-in, and a few frame rate dips in specific areas. This is one of the few games that got the complete Switch 2 upgrade package, and in every aspect it was improved. A lot of these differences are most noticeable while docked on a 4K display. But even in handheld mode, you could see that there's a pretty big difference. Frame rate dips are non-existent, visually it's absolutely stunning, colors are much more vibrant, and it's just better in every way you can possibly imagine. Doom Eternal is one of those games that you had to ask yourself, how the hell did they get this thing even running on the Switch? Panic Button did such an amazing job porting this game over, but needless to say it ran a little rough on the Switch 1. This game did not receive a fancy Switch 2 overhaul, at least not yet. But regardless, you can still see a noticeable difference in terms of the colors being more vibrant and enemy characters looking a lot more crisp and in focus. And this particular area has been prone to frame rate dips for me in the past, and as you can see, it's just non-existent here. I still hope in the future we can get an official Switch 2 version of this game, but even if we don't, this is still a far better experience. Wolfenstein The New Colossus is another one of those games where I had to ask myself, how the hell did they get this thing running so well on the original Switch? But the biggest issue I had with this game was with depth of field. Objects in the distance were just so blurry and hazy. I've described it as it feels like I'm playing the game with my glasses off. While playing it on the Switch 2, it's not completely eliminated, but it's definitely far better. Once again, this is one of the games that did not get the full Switch 2 upgrade package, and I think it's unlikely we'll see one for it in the future, because the game is just so old at this point, and I'm okay with that, because it's noticeably a better experience on the Switch 2 as is. Mario Wonder runs fine on the Switch 1, so that's not an issue. I included it on this list just to demonstrate the much more dynamic color range the Switch 2 has. Everything just pops out more and looks so much better. It's very impressive for a non-OLED display. When The Outer Worlds was ported over to the Switch, the game was practically unplayable. It just ran so bad. Since then, a couple of patches have been released that have definitely improved it, but it's still very difficult to play on the original Switch, especially in handheld mode. Everything is blurry and grainy. NPCs blend in with the background and this almost paste-like mush. It was rough. Unfortunately, although the Switch 2 does make things look more vibrant, it's not enough. The game is still very rough and is not ideal to play on the Switch. It needs the complete Switch 2 overhaul, and similar to Wolfenstein, I just don't see that happening. I think this is as good as it's probably gonna get. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't see a Switch 2 version being made. When Pokemon Scarlet and Violet was first released for the Switch, I was shocked that Nintendo allowed a mainline Pokemon game to be released in the state that it was in. Tons of slowdown, crazy background pop-in, and just this overall graphical choppiness. Various patches have been released to try and smooth things out, and it did make things quite a bit better. But the game received a rather large Switch 2 Day 1 upgrade, and the difference is night and day. This game is probably the most dramatic difference I've noticed between the Switch and Switch 2 versions. From the frame rate, with the game now running 60 frames a second, there's like no background pop-in, you can see for miles and miles away, and graphically the game is absolutely beautiful. And you guys must be good luck, because as soon as I started filming, I found a shiny in the wild. It feels like this game should have been a next generation Pokemon game, but was forced to run on the existing hardware. If you've been putting off playing Scarlet and Violet, playing it on the Switch 2 is the way to go.